This is the Treasure Island Baseball Network.
It's time to check in with your Minnesota Twins. Going inside the front office, the clubhouse, the minor leagues, the spotlight is on your team. Welcome to Inside Twins.
Well, welcome indeed to Inside Twins. First time we've been with you since the end of last season. My name is Chris Atterbury. I'm inside the network headquarters here at Target Field. You can see the blinds pulled behind us. The work never stops here at the ballpark. A remodeling of the Champions Club has been ongoing since the end of last season. It'll be ready to roll. One of the many new things in Twins territory for the 2026 campaign, and we are counting down now. We're counting down towards Caravan and Twins Fest at the end of this month, and then spring training next month, and then we will be off and running. One of the new things for the Minnesota Twins will be the manager, and it's a new, we'll call it upcycled. Derek Shelton, he's not a stranger to Twins territory. Outstanding job as the bench coach here under both Paul Molitor and Rocco Baldelli, and the Twins are very fortunate to now welcome Shelty back in the lead role. Look at that handsome devil. Look at that beard of yours. We are thrilled to have you back, Shelty. I know you had a chance to come back and introduce yourself a little bit again to the people of Minnesota when you were hired. You talked a lot at that point in time about what you learned in Pittsburgh. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of people don't either want to or don't have the ability to be introspective and reflect and make themselves better. What are some of the takeaways that you have unearthed as you look back on the things that you would maybe do differently or that you now have a chance to do a little differently?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and thank you for having me on it. It is good to be back. I mean, I've been back in the Twin Cities a couple times since the original announcement, and it's like I said during the press conference, it just feels like coming home a little bit. Just enjoyed my time there so much. But to your question, Chris, I think the biggest thing is, number one, you have to have time to reflect, and I did have that, with the fact of when I was let go and the ability to come home, and it's the first time in my adult life that I've ever been home in the summertime. And it's a definite adjustment. It is an adjustment for myself. It's an adjustment for my family. They're not used to dad being there. There's an adjustment of like what you watch on TV because you're used to watching games. But after, probably a reflection period of maybe being a little bitter and a little mad of being let go, it was more like, all right, I want to do this again. What do I need to do better? What did I do well, which you don't really dwell on? And then what do I need to do better? And I think part of that, when you're in a summertime and it's not in an off season where you're actually looking for a job, because there were no jobs at that point, you had the ability to be really, honest with yourself. And I started talking to people that was close to me, people that I worked with, people that I worked against, and just basically got tried to get a wholesale thought process of what I could improve on.
One of the things you were so good at when you were here, and it was a big part of the success that the Twins had with Paul and with Rocco, was I felt like on any given day, you knew everything that was going on in the clubhouse. You had the pulse of everybody, from the chef in the back room to the trainers, to the rookies, to the veterans. You knew who was having a bad day, who was under the weather, who's the family pet might be ill. You just had that pulse of everybody in the room, and you're always working the room. Harder to do that as a manager because you're getting pulled in different directions. How important is it to have somebody in that role that then can help the manager keep on top of that? And how do you now, as the manager, maintain those great relationship skills that you have that make for a great clubhouse while still doing all those managerial deals?
Well, to the last part of that, number one, you have to communicate. And I think going back to your first question, that was a reflection point for me very heavily. I think I lost a little bit of that touch point with our group previously in Pittsburgh, and want to get back to that because I do feel that has been a strength of mine in terms of building relationships and being able to cultivate those relationships. Now, to your point, it is different because when you're in the head chair, there's always a player that's in a situation where they're not happy because you're the one signing the lineup card. When you're the bench coach, it's really easy. You're the guy that is giving suggestions, but you're not ultimately the guy that's making the decision. So that is something that I am going to focus on and make sure that I try to continue to do a better job of, and something that I pride myself on. I think to the first part of that question is, hiring that position of your staff is extremely important. And I kind of looked at it almost three-pronged, and we kind of did it three-pronged. We hired Mark Hallberg, who, grew up a Twins fan, is from Wisconsin, very close to Minneapolis. So number one, he's got the diehard Twins, gene in him. He comes very highly recommended from the Giants. He's extremely smart. And then most importantly, he's completely different than me. And I think that's something that's really important when you have leadership roles, to have, different thought processes and the ability to challenge. So excited to have Mark to that group because he communicates really well. And I think one of the things that stood out when we started talking to people is I started talking to former players and former veteran players that I trusted, and they raved about him. So first and foremost, that was important. In the other part of the three-headed monster, Mike Rubello, who was with me in Pittsburgh, knows me well, knows how I manage the game. He was with me for 6 years the whole time there. Is extremely smart with the rules and other facets of the game, has managed in the minor leagues. So he gives us another, kind of voice in that room. And then lastly, adding Toby Gardenhire to the group. I mean, obviously anybody that is a Twins fan knows the name Gardenhire really well, with the fact that his dad managed the Twins for so long and is such a big part of this community. But as importantly with that, the two things are Toby really communicates well. And number two, we're going to have a lot of young players, not only this year, but moving forward, because our farm system is so loaded. Wanted someone that had the ability to have those relationships already built in with those players out of the minor leagues.
And on top of that, I'm very excited. Grady Sizemore, LaTroy Hawkins. We're talking about big league guys who, when they walk in a room, you just feel them in the room. And I think those guys will all also be part of what I think is going to be a critical staff. And we'll circle back to that later, and this role of that staff in kind of unlocking some of your current players. I want to ask you quickly, though, about how you're using your time right now. I mean, we're ticking down towards spring training. I know when you got hired, you went out and you met a bunch of guys in person. You went and saw Royce, saw some of the other people. Between seeing players, going through developmental plans for existing players, talking about roster construction, and in the past, I know staffs would do some sim game managing in the off season, putting training camp plans together. How are you organizing your days, and how are you prioritizing some of those things?
Well, I think number one, we wanted initially from the time that we got the staff set to start the established relationships with the player group, whether that was over the phone or in person with some guys. And then the specific skill coaches in the pitching group and hitting group have probably done more of the communication in that regard right now. I kind of left guys alone during the holidays. I let them go to what they're going to do with their families and if they're going to go on vacation. And now as we're getting back into the start of the new year and getting closer to spring training, you start to have a little bit more contact. But a lot of our time right now that we're spending is within that core group that we just talked about. And then you add Pete Mackey and Keith Beauregard, our new hitting coach, into it to kind of design spring training. And Toby Gardenhire will be running spring training. I think the one advantage that I do have with our spring training complex, as you highlighted, I was here for 2 years and running spring training. And then when Rocco came on board, I actually designed the spring training plan that we had. Now we're going to do tweaks to it. We're going to use our players. We're going to use our new staff. But there is some familiarity with not only the ballpark down in Fort Myers, but also with how the spring training is going to run. So a lot of the time right now is just conversations within the group. And as we get closer to, finalizing who's going to be in camp, then we'll be able to kind of put the final touches and structure on it.
Yeah, that roster obviously is still very much in flux, but we know a lot of the names, and it's a lot of very similar names. And they're guys who were highly thought of, highly drafted, had success in the minor leagues. And it really encompasses almost your whole roster. I'll leave Byron out because he's kind of his own animal. And I'll leave Luke Keeschall out because we haven't seen it even yet enough for a fully healthy Luke Keeschall, though we're all super excited about everything that he does. But whether it's a Larnick or a Wallner or a Brooks Lee or even a Ryan Jeffers, these are players, Austin Martin, that we've seen. And we've seen them have great moments, and we've seen them struggle, which is what baseball players do. How critical it is, Royce, big part of this, to unlock the next level for those guys. And how do you attack that?
Yeah, well, number one, we attack it by building relationships, because I think as you highlighted there, we've seen, or Twins fans have seen, glimpses of really good play by all the guys that you mentioned. So that consistency over a greater length of time is something that we're concentrating on. How we get there, I think I don't have the answer for you right now because we don't have those relationships built. But as we build those relationships, we're going to be able to kind of fundamentally put those player plans in place as we get to spring training. And then by the time we go to Baltimore, have a really good idea about the guts of our club. So right now it's just kind of learning and growing with the group in terms of what they want, what they need, what we feel, and kind of meshing that together.
I know Royce was super excited that you came down and saw him, and very positive. He can be a very emotional guy. He obviously is a very talented guy. How big a deal is it to keep Royce rolling in the right direction and to maybe start even with him? Not that he's more or less important than anybody else on that roster, but with what he can mean to the success on the field of a franchise. I know he was one of your first visits for a reason.
Yeah, he was one of my first visits, and he's extremely important to us. And I think you highlighted on the position player side. I mean, we start with Buck, and as we should because of the player that Buck has grown into. But Royce is extremely important for us, and I think first and foremost, what I wanted to make sure that I talked to Royce about was, number one, how important he was to me personally. I mean, I knew him as a really young player. He was drafted when I was there. He was in spring training for a couple years as a 18 and 19-year-old, and he's grown into a man. And so it was just developing, that relationship and having that conversation. We got to keep him on the field, and I needed him to hear from me, like, you're really important to us when you're healthy. So how we take care of our body, what we do on a daily basis, how your off-season plans. And the thing that was awesome for me was the plan that he had already had in place and how he was taking care of himself. And it's obviously how much he cares about not only the Twins, but also being on the field to help us win games.
You can win games in a lot of different ways. And I was having a conversation with some other guys around the league, and it's a topic that several managers, several coaches, several GMs, even players have talked about. The current developmental world for a player, when you're really good when you're 11 and on up into high school, college, professional baseball, very little of that is about winning plays during the course of a baseball game. It's about what's your exit velo, how fast you run, how hard do you throw, do you hit the numbers, you're popping around to these showcases. It's certainly not the kid's fault that that's the system that they're plugged into. You now, as a manager, your job is to win the game. Those 9 innings on any given night. Do you have to almost kind of reset yourself and not assume that everybody knows situational baseball just because they're incredibly talented at the game and are in the big leagues?
I think the word you used there is something that I really reflected on it a lot this summer was assumption. And, one of the things that I hope my staff and I can do better is, don't assume that guys know things. So when we have conversations, go back and follow up and ask questions and see how they interpret it. Because to your point, and I mean, we could do hours upon hours of, the way youth baseball is because of showcases and because of the specialty skill sets. The design of winning is probably not as prominent as it was 30 years ago. And on the secondary part of that, guys are getting to the big leagues so much quicker that, we used to say once you got to the big leagues, guys were fully developed. That's not even close. And that's not isolated to the Twins. This is throughout the industry where we're having to continue to teach. And it doesn't matter if it's the teams that have won the previous World Series or the teams that have finished last. There's still a ton of development that's going on within major league clubhouses. I think what we have to do is we have to highlight that the assumption part doesn't come into play, and we need to make sure that we have conversations. And then on the flip side, we have to make sure that our environment is a place where players feel comfortable saying like, hey man, I don't know this, or I don't understand that. I would rather them do that than just nod their head at us and say like, hey, I got it. Because ultimately a play is going to come up or a situation is going to come up that they're not prepared for, or they don't understand. And you could win or lose a game because of it.
It's a very good point. It's a fascinating topic, and I think it's a critical one in clubhouses all across the game. We'd be remiss here in our first segment if we didn't touch on pitching a little bit. Now, the good news is I can list off 8 guys who are legitimate major league starters that you've got. Pablo, Joe, Bailey, Sim, Zebby, Taj, Mick Abel, David Festa, some of the younger guys just scratching the surface, but certainly the talent, the ability to be impactful starters in the major leagues. The bullpen, obviously very much a work in progress. Now, I named 8. I think we all know 8's not enough, right? Like you can't have enough starting pitching. We've seen that across the league in every single clubhouse. How much of your time is spent in conversation with Derek and Jeremy and your pitching crew about what that bullpen eventually is going to look like? Because I'm assuming it's going to probably look different when we all roll into Fort Myers than it looks today.
Yeah, it's definitely going to look different than it does, on February 12th or February 13th, whenever we report to spring training, than it is now. I think we've seen the reliever market be a little volatile this offseason, and it's kind of gone back and forth. We've seen some guys sign early. We've seen some guys probably sign for, more dollars than we've thought. It's going to be interesting to see how not only our bullpen shakes out, but throughout the industry, how bullpens shake out. Isolated to us, the thing that you started with was the fact that we do have a lot of starting pitching depth at the top, and then highlighted by the fact of Joe and Pablo there at the top. And I think that's where we're going to focus, because you can win games with starting pitching. And the one thing that I have learned over the course of doing this the last 20 years at the major league level and managing for 6 is whatever you think your bullpen looks like February 14th is not what it's going to look like on March 20th or March 28th. And then it's not what it's going to look like on June 1st. So it's something that's going to be in flux. It's something that's extremely fluid, and you don't want to get ahead of it one way or another, because of the fact you get really excited about things and then something happens and then you're not as excited, and then guys jump out and end up being your leverage guys. So I think the next month or so is going to be interesting. And then once we get into spring training, just watching that watch that competition go.
You use the word competition. Camps take on very different forms depending on kind of the life cycle of a certain organization. Sometimes it's, hey, let's just get in shape. We know who our guys are. Everybody kind of knows who they are, what's expected of them. Sometimes you got people fighting for the last 2 spots on the roster. Sometimes everything's up for grabs. Do you expect and do you like having a competitive camp where it's a lot of people who can go out and perform for you and actually earn spots, whether it be in the big leagues or as part of the plan in AAA?
Yeah, I think you first and foremost, you have to be careful making decisions on spring training, because of the fact that, the quality of pitching that they face or the quality of hitters they face, depending on where they come in the game, maybe doesn't give you the greatest indication by just actual pure numbers. So you have to look at other factors. But on the flip side of that, there's 2 points. Is number one, we have a new staff and a new manager coming in. So we're getting to learn guys. So watching them in competitive environments is going to be extremely important. And then number two, we have some spots that there's going to be at bats for, and there's going to be innings for. So there is going to be competition. I like the fact that we have versatile players that can bounce around the diamond and play different places. And because of that, just innately, you're going to have competition for spots and at bats. And then, as you highlighted, because our bullpen is in flux right now, we're going to be able to get a good look at guys for innings.
Love it. It's an opportunity. I love the energy. I love the approach. Derek Shelton. We call him Shelty. You don't like being called Derek, right?
No, I feel like I'm in trouble when people call me Derek. My wife calls me Derek when she's mad at me.
We'll call you Shelty. We're glad to have you back in a Twins uniform and can't wait to get things started. As for our program here on Inside Twins, kicking off our off-season programming, we're going to take a very brief break. When we come back, we're going to play a little game, a little Cardack, a little game show, and see if Derek Shelton can identify from some clues who's on the baseball cards we're going to share with you all across these social media platforms, whether it's on X, on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course, we'll talk it out for you, all joining us across our fine radio network. More on Inside Twins with Derek Shelton next, right here on your home for Twins baseball. Welcome back. The show is Inside Twins. Chris Atterbury, Derek Shelton. We're going to talk an awful lot over the course of the summer. We're kicking off our season right here on Inside Twins. All right, Shelton, here's how the game works, and I'm a bit of an amateur as the host of this particular program. We call it Cardack, the old Johnny Carson, where he'd put the envelope up on his head and he'd make the predictions. Those of us of a certain age recall
I'm old enough to remember Johnny Carson, so yeah.
Yeah, kids can Google it if they need to, but it was awfully good. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a baseball card with some of the information blotted out. We're going to talk about it. You can guess. We've got like 3 clues or so, and we'll see if you can figure out kind of what's going on. Sound good?
I love it. Let's go.
All right, here we go. We're going to start with one of your players, and we're going to keep it bare bones here on this card, and we're just going to throw the stats up. So these are the stats of the player. It doesn't show position, age, where he's from, or anything like that. You can just kind of look at some of the numbers there, and I'll ask you if you want to take a shot right out of the gate here as to which of your current players this potentially could be. No pressure.
I'm going to say
fill in the blank.
I'm going to say Ryan Jeffers.
Wow, how about that one? I think we got a winner. We don't even have to get to the fact that he won a Cal Ripken championship when he was 10, or the fact that he has been incredibly durable. This, in fact, is Ryan Jeffers, and it takes a catcher to know a catcher, apparently.
Yeah,
the man from North Carolina, second-round pick, and there's a good look at RJ. And, there's been a bit of a platoon situation, not just here, but really around the league. Ryan has been adamant he wants to catch more, and you guys have said, guess what? You're going to catch more. Given your managerial perspective, but also your former catcher perspective, what do you like about Ryan Jeffers, and how excited are you to see what he's capable of this year?
Very excited. I mean, I was able to go and spend some time with him in Wilmington around Thanksgiving. The durability part is what stands out. And I think you saw there, he hit 21 home runs 2 years ago, 9 last year. There's a good offensive player in there, and he is going to get an opportunity to catch more. We're going to have to be mindful. There's very few guys in the game that did catch 120, 130 games, but I think we do expect RJ to catch more. Love the durability, like the way he handles pitchers. I just from sitting down talking to him, he's got a good way about him, and he's got a good cadence to how he talks. And that's, that sounds funny, but that's really important when you're dealing with pitchers on a daily basis.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, Ryan last year used the backside of the field a lot, kind of spread out. He said he felt like he was just a tick away from unlocking that power again, and we're looking forward to seeing that power show up in 2026. Ryan Jeffers, well done. You only needed one clue, so that's the first of 3. Let's see if you can match that here. Again, we're going to start skeleton crew here. As you can see from the numbers, this won't be one of your current players, but it's certainly someone who's been in your baseball ecosphere throughout your career. You can see some numbers there from the Brewers. Led the league there in 91 and a bunch of stuff. At 5.3 WAR back before we knew what WAR was. Led the league in triples. You want to take a stab, or do you need more?
I'm going to say it's Molly.
But it is Molly, as you see the other one jump up. One of just 5 players with 3,000 hits, a 300 lifetime batting average, 500 bags. Let's see and one of 4 Twins managers to be named manager of the year. No pressure, by the way. All of your predecessors were named manager of the year.
Yeah, so I love that so much. I love that so much. Yeah, the triples are what throw it off, man. I was really fortunate that I was able to spend a year with Molly and consider him a friend. I mean, there is no greater pressure, I will tell you, to come in as a bench coach when you do not have a relationship with someone and you have to sit next to Paul Molitor and just pray to God that he does not ask you a question that you don't know the answer to. So
well, here's you mauling him at PNC Park a couple of years ago, and again, a great relationship. Tony Leo making a cameo there in the video as well. I get it. I sit next to him, and I'm afraid I'm going to say something stupid because he's so smart about this game, and I think it's going to be, again, for you, he's in the booth now. He's not sitting next to you, but is he a guy who you always value as just a baseball resource to have around?
100%. The way he looks at the game, there's very few guys that I've come in contact that are as great a players. I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest players like of all time here, and still has the passion for little things. And I think, I mean, you sit next to him, the way he talks about base running, the way he talks about pitchers' pickoff moves and leads and all those little things. I learned so much from just being around him, and am very fortunate to not only have worked for him, but even more fortunate to consider him, a friend and somebody that I can lean on, because he's such a great resource for so many things.
Yeah, there he is. Good look at Paul Molitor. All right, you're 2 for 2, by the way, and you've only needed one clue. And we'll see if you can get this one on one clue. It is our final card here on Cardack. And the first fact there, inducted into the Illinois High School Baseball Coaches Hall of Fame.
Oh, that's
in
my dad.
That's
my dad.
Boom. 3 for 3. 3 for 3. Now, favorite teaching? God gave you two hands for a reason. Did you hear that once or twice?
Oh my God, yeah. So the God gave you two hands for a reason thing is a really, really, it's interesting. I'm looking at my dad's numbers there as they go. And then my dad ended up getting hurt, which if he would have got hurt in modern baseball, they just would have fixed it and he would have been fine. And because I think he was 17 and 66 and 18 and 67. But yeah, the God gave you two hands for a reason was like when you're turning double plays and, kids always have their hands all over the place. He used to say it all the time. And it's the funny thing about this story was when I was managing in the minor leagues for the Yankees, I used to say it a lot to young minor league infielders. And one that I said it to over and over again was Robinson Cano, because I was fortunate to manage Robbie his first 2 years in the States. And when Robinson got to the big leagues, he sent over a jersey to me. He was the first big leaguer I managed, and it said, "To Derek Shelton, God gave you two hands for a reason." And I have that jersey. It's one of the few jerseys that actually hangs in my house because it's something that kind of connects multi-generational. And then in 2011, I actually coached on an all-star team that went to Taiwan, and my dad was my guest, and Robbie played on that team. And the first thing that Robbie said to my dad as he introduced himself was, "God gave you two hands for a reason." So yeah, that is a special one for us.
That's an amazing story. We're going to make another amazing leap because this is the card. And you might be wondering why there are two people on that picture. This Orioles team had two Ron Sheltons.
Yes.
One is your dad, and one wrote and directed Bull Durham.
Yes.
And they were on the same team. Can you tell everybody which one for our fans listening on the radio? It's two Orioles side by side in a team picture from I think 67. Two
right.
Ron Sheltons. Which one's your pops?
So the one if you're looking at the computer screen, the one on your right, and if you've seen me without a beard, you would understand that, and a lot thinner. The one on the right is my dad. The one on the left is the other Ron Shelton. And the funny thing about this is we knew this growing up my whole life. He wrote Bull Durham. He wrote White Men Can't Jump. I had friends. He's from California. My father's from Southern Illinois. I have friends that I worked with the Yankees, gentleman by the name of Mick Kelleher that played in the big leagues with the Cubs that actually knew him. And the funny story is a couple years ago, Ron Shelton actually wrote a book, and in the book he references my dad, and he references me now that the fact that I was managing in the big leagues. So it's a funny story. We heard about it the whole time growing up. We heard about mail getting sent to the wrong place. And then when we were growing up, back in the day when you called the hotel and asked for tickets, because that team not only had Ron Shelton, but Joe Altobelli managed it, who managed the 83 Oriole team. Johnny Oates, who played in the big leagues and managed in the big leagues, was on that team. Bobby Grich, who's someone that I believe should be in the Hall of Fame. If you look at WAR, was on that team, as was Don Baylor. So it was a great team. And back when my dad would call and ask for tickets, and Baylor was the one that was synonymous for it, he would be like, "Is this Ron Shelton, the movie guy, or Ron Shelton, the teacher?" My dad was always like, "The teacher. The movie guy probably doesn't need to ask you for tickets." So, yeah.
I hope some of those Ron Shelton residual checks showed up at your house. And
yeah, they did. Those, I don't think they've showed up. Those have showed up
never
at my
showed up,
house.
No. All right. Well, great game, great effort, 3 for 3. And you only needed one clue on each and every one of them. We'll take one more break. The show is Inside Twins. Our guest is Shelty, Twins manager Derek Shelton. We'll come back, take your questions via the marvels of the interwebs. That's all coming up next on your home for Twins baseball. Our show is Inside Twins, first edition of the year, and Derek Shelton kind enough to join us. If you're joining us on X or YouTube or Facebook, you're watching the Twins Fest video promo for Twins Fest coming up later this month. I think that was Zebby dancing. It will
not be Shelty dancing. I can tell you that. It would not be Shelty.
I was not going to be able to flush that one out of my mind. If you're joining us across our fine network of affiliates, we appreciate that as well. We're going to take some questions now from various fans for Derek Shelton and Shelty. I'll take the first one. It's come to my attention this morning that a guy who played for the Twins, a guy who played for you last year, Michael A. Taylor, going to be in camp with the Twins this year, maybe dipping his toe in in the coaching world and maybe helping out with some outfielders.
Yeah, I think, when it was a situation when Michael decided to retire and then showed that he wanted to stay in the game. I mean, it was a natural fit. I mean, he had a great year here for the Twins. A few years back, I was able to manage him. Anybody that spent any time around him knows how wonderful a human being is. I will tell you one Michael A. Taylor story that really stands out and why I think he's going to be, important for our group is in Pittsburgh during the season, we moved O'Neal Cruz to the outfield, to center field from shortstop. And that was where Michael A. was playing, predominantly. And the first day that O'Neal went out, and then from there on out, Michael A. Taylor was standing by his side, helping him, coach him, teaching him along the way. And I think it just speaks to the quality of human being. So we have the Twins tie, we have my tie. Grady Sizemore, who is going to be our outfield coach and coach first base, was actually in Chicago with him last year and knows him. So it was just a natural fit. And I think we're really excited to have him in the fold.
If you're a young outfielder and you are surrounded by Michael A. Taylor, Grady Sizemore, and Byron Buxton, you can't help but learn something if you listen a little bit. So that is a wonderful group of guys to pass along some knowledge. Let's go ahead and we're going to scroll through some of the questions. Let's see. Here's John. What managers have you looked to as mentors over your career? That's John joining us via Facebook.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I've been extremely fortunate from the managers that I played for. And I'm actually going to go back to even when I was playing, and someone that has Twins ties as Bill Evers, who was actually on the staff, Rocco's first staff. He managed me in the minor leagues, and I was not a good minor league player, but Bill took kind of an affinity to me, probably because I was a bad player and I was on the bench, and started to teach me and talk to me about managing the game, seeing the fact that I would hopefully get into that side of the game. So he's probably first and foremost the person that influenced, my thought process and how you go about it. And then honestly, every manager, I worked for Eric Wedge, and then I worked for Joe Madden, and I worked for John Gibbons and Kevin Cash and Molly and Rocco. I took something from all of them. They were all very different in how they went about it, but they all had the players first and foremost. But I do think that my time in Tampa with Joe was so impactful just because of the fact that we were doing a lot of things before everybody else did them. You talk about, how you use numbers and how you use gut feel and the combination of that. Joe was the master of that. And he was also the master of not worrying about what anybody else thought. And I think that was really impactful. And then the overlap there, although I didn't actually work for him, was Don Zimmer was part of our staff there. And if you sit with Zim on a daily basis and just listen to the knowledge that he had, I think it just by osmosis you learn. And the one thing that he used to always tell me was, just do something because you believe in it, because you're the one at the end of the day that's having to answer the question on it. So if you believe in it and you believe it's right, do it. Don't worry about what anybody else thinks. And I think that's probably as good of advice a young manager can get.
Yeah, one of the cool things about those guys you listed off, they're all incredibly different personalities and approaches, and yet all at their core great baseball people, who are very, very successful at what they do. All right, let's see what other questions we can dig up here. We're combing through them. All right. From a player development standpoint, what do you plan to do differently? We checked in on that a little bit, and then construction of a lineup. That's another topic that I think is one you could probably talk for days about.
Yeah, well, on the player development standpoint, I think that's a good question there from Blake, and we did touch on it earlier. It was just we have to continue to develop. We have to continue to work. Spring training will be a little bit different in terms of what we actually focus on, because we are going to have a bunch of young players, and then we're going to have young players come up through the year with the fact that our system is very top heavy. So I think that is just making sure that, number one, we develop the relationships, and then number two, that we stay on top of it as the year goes on. And then lineup construction. Yeah, we could do a whole hot stove on lineup construction, and people feel about it, and they feel that, everybody should be in the same spot every day. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to put the best lineup out there every night to beat the starting pitcher. And I know a lot of people like consistency in lineups. There's really no theory behind that at all. If you have a specific team, you can do that. If you don't have a specific team, you have to get a little more creative. I would say that Dave Roberts probably has a little bit better idea on a daily basis what he's doing with his lineup than maybe 20 other managers. And everybody strives to, maybe have that kind of lineup. But the easiest way to answer that question is we're going to put the best lineup to beat the starter every day.
Yeah, and even for Dave, he moves Mookie one day and people freak out. Like,
right,
so
it's
like
crazy,
Even when you're rolling 3 Hall of Famers at the top of your lineup, there's no set answer in terms of exactly the best way to do that. Let's see what else we got here. We're okay. Let's change gears here via Facebook. Eric Sullivan asking the hard hitting stuff. What's your favorite pizza topping?
Oh, I like meat. I like pepperoni. Go that way. I mean, I do. It's funny that Black Sheep in the North Loop is one of my favorite pizza places. Maybe I'll run this into a free pizza, but I mean, when we were in Minnesota before, we ate there all the time. So anything with sausage, green pepper. So probably sausage, green pepper would be the go-to.
Now you are an Illinois guy, but you're not from Chicago. Do you eat the thick stuff? Do you go for the?
I grew up like right between Chicago and Milwaukee, so I like the thick. Like when we go into Chicago, I like to get the thick, but I'm a huge like thin tavern style pizza that they make in just like in small little bars in Northern Illinois. So that is the go-to. When we go into Chicago, I got a couple good places that a couple neighborhood places.
I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm very much looking forward, Shelty, to chatting with you on a daily basis. I'm looking forward to getting this thing rolling. I know there's a lot of work to do between now and spring training, and then the work really starts. But I appreciate you joining us today. We'll end with this one, and we appreciate everybody submitting questions. You're really good at this stuff, and you were great on air, whether it was on MLB radio, whether it was when you would guest on the various MLB Network TV shows. You fill up a room. You really have that gift of connecting with the people you're talking to. Will we see a lot of that now? I mean, that's not every manager's forte. Is that, especially in light of where the Twins kind of have been the last couple of years and fighting the perception battle? Will we see you on TV stations? You're going to be on the radio, or you're going to be on podcast, or you're going to be at the different social gatherings around town talking to people? Because it's something
I expect to do that. It's really important for me, number one, in this chair, and just the way the city of Minneapolis and the Twin Cities, it's extremely important to me. I mean, just to be part of the community and be out there and be able to, show my personality. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. I'm really looking forward to Twins Fest coming up in the Caravan. So yeah, hopefully you'll see and enjoy my personality.
I have a feeling they will. I can't wait for everybody in Twins territory to get to know Shelty as well as we have been fortunate enough to do. Hey, be safe travels, and I'll catch up with you in person here in a few weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris, for having me on. Look forward to seeing you.
All right, that's Derek Shelton. Derek Shelton, Twins manager, kicking off this season of Inside Twins. We appreciate everybody who joined us via the various social media platforms, X, YouTube, and Facebook, and of course, all of you across our great network of affiliates throughout Twins territory. And again, we're coming your way. Caravan soon, Twins Fest around the corner, and spring training before you know it. Big thanks to Derek Shelton. Big thanks to all of you. Chris Atterbury saying so long right here on your home for Twins baseball.